Hello again. This is my second review on the channel. Since I reviewed American Biggest Alice, it's only fair that I review the sequel, Madness Returns. So, same as before. And again, sorry for any awkwardness, since, I'm autistic, so sorry. First things first, the appearance and aesthetic of the game itself. One of the main things that I said was a benefit to the original McGee's Alice was that I think I called it Quake-like graphics, made the aesthetic much more eerie. And, obviously since this game released in 2011, was it? I think. In that time, obviously the graphics are much improved and the Quake graphics were no longer needed. And yet, despite that, I'd argue that they actually did better, since it actually granted some uniqueness to the different levels. And to say that the different levels managed to pull off their different aesthetics is an understatement. For starters, there's the Vale of Tears suddenly turning into the Vale of Doom, the Hatter's Domain just being the complete inverse of what you would think the Mad Hatter to be. The Mysterious East, I think it's called, the world that you're seeing in the background, was not, if I'm correct, that's not something that's in the original books and all that, but for something that's, I think, original, very much nails it. The Queensland, for very, very quickly designed, and yet it's very much gives the idea that you're returning to somewhere that you really don't want to be. And then, of course, there's the dollhouse. That is just depressing as all hell on that level, isn't it? Anyway, a little bit. I suppose that's about it for the graphics and aesthetic. I know, a lot shorter than the previous video, but yeah, suppose I should go on to the actual gameplay. And pretty much every problem that I had with the original game, the first game, American Biggest Alice, is pretty much completely fixed with this game. Aside from a few upper new problems, but we'll get into those later. First off, movement is basically perfected now. The jumping is actual jumping for once. It's actual movement itself is smooth. You can glide, which is nice. The combat, that's very much improved a bit more. It's no longer just walking around and just firing whatever the hell you got. It's now just to be more careful and strategic, and I think I said that right, I don't know. So, yeah, actual movement and combat is much more improved and far more better than the original. The only few problems that I have is with the actual combat, and specifically with how you fight, since with the original there was a lot of weapons that you can choose from, starting with the Wobble Blade to the Deck of Cards to the Ice Wand all the way up to the Blunderbuss. But with this game, you've only got 4 options. Wobble Blade, the Hobby Mallet thing, the Pepper Grunt I think it's called, and the T-Cannon. That's very much simplified from the original game. Granted, there is also that rabbit bomb thing, but that's not really a weapon, really, is it? So, that is unfortunate, but however, I won't necessarily be too harsh on it because, I'll get on to that near the end of the review. So, I suppose I could talk about the music. Whoever composed the music for the different domains and all that, they very much nailed what they were going for with each one. The desolation and depression of London, the happiness of the Vale of Tears, the industrial ticking of the Hatter's Domain, the scary, the eerie, dark, foreboding music of the Queensland, and especially on the, I think the track's called Madness, the one doing doing those little flashback sequences. That particular music track is my favourite, and definitely earns its name. So yeah, overall, the music, whoever did the composing for it, they very much knew they were doing, and McGee got his money's worth from whoever it was. So yeah. Now then, what else? I suppose my last point that I can think of to talk about, and that being the story. In regards to the story, compared to the original was much more simple, as most other game stories would have been at that time. Nowadays, with this one, however, they really toned it up a bit. I mean, to have Wonderland be normal at first, and be what you'd expect Wonderland to look like when you first think of Alice in Wonderland, only to have it start to fall apart in very much in the way that symbolises what Alice is going through, and how each domain almost sort of connects to her in a certain way about what's going on, and how she's trying to figure things out, and especially with having especially with the twist at the end with who started the fire. That is, yeah, McGee, again, he got his money's worth from the writers. Well, unless he created the story himself, which, fair. So, again, money's worth, very much got it from the story. So then, as I just said, that should be my final point. But before I make a review score, there's just one thing I want to talk about this game, because there's not really that much talk about why it's in the state that it was released in. And one thing that people sort of commented about this game when it first came out was that it felt that it had less going for it than the original, that there was a lot more smaller and simple than the original, which is true. It does sort of feel a bit smaller technically. So, however, that was not McGee's fault. In fact, if you look at the development of the game, you very quickly see that McGee, he did not want this game to be smaller than the original in the slightest. It was clearly meant to be much bigger. I mean, for God's sake, there was a world map. If a game's got a world map, then you know it's going to be big. So, I mean, just look up the actual an old Madness Returns trailer that McGee himself actually released on YouTube, I think. It very much instantly shows the difference of what he wanted to do. The only reason why the game isn't the way it is now was, as you can probably guess, because EA jumped in and more or less told McGee to cut a lot of stuff from the game, which is very unfortunate, but it's EA. What else were you expecting? Seriously. EA, what were you thinking? So, unfortunately, that meant that the game was obviously smaller than the original, again, as I've just kept saying multiple times. But it's ultimately not McGee's fault. I mean, McGee, if you're watching this, which I doubt you are, let's be honest, then trust me when I say that you deserved a lot better when it came to making this game. Your vision should have gone true. So, that's unfortunate. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say about that bit. So then, that just leads me to the review score. Overall, relatively positive outcome on this game. Obviously, there were a couple of things that are a little bit wrong with it that I don't necessarily like, although that's mainly because of the whole cut content problem that the game suffered from because of EA, so ultimately not McGee's fault, sorry. So yeah. Overall, I'd give it a 8 out of 10. And the only reason why it's getting why not can't really go any higher is because what I felt could have been good for it was unfortunately more probably removed because of the whole cut content problem. So again, that's unfortunate, but again, not Mickey's fault, sadly. So yeah, I would very much recommend it. Plus, you do get the original American Biggies Alice with the game, so yeah, definitely a worthy purchase, if I say so. And I think it's actually quite cheap, so I suggest it very much. Well, unless you want your childhood to stay intact, in which case, yeah, don't. This is not the game if you want to keep your childhood intact. So yeah, that is the end of the review. And as my second attempt of doing so. So overall, good game. And so yeah, if anyone would like to leave any feedback in the comments, I would be very much welcome to looking at it and taking it into consideration for any future videos. Granted, there will be those who are a bit mad and say some bad stuff in the comments, but that's pretty much true for every video at this point now, isn't it? Again, like I said in the first video, you just can't control the internet, can you? So yeah, overall, thank you for watching, and subscribe. Goodbye.